Well, happy Halloween. We got number 1, Oregon at Michigan. We got number 4, Ohio State at number 3, Penn State. That's the big one this weekend. And will undefeated and 13th ranked Indiana, will their strength of schedule cost them later on? We'll get to all that. Let's talk. It's time for the Locked On Big Ten Squad.
You're talking ball with the Big Ten Squad. From USC to Ohio State, from Michigan to Oregon, from Nebraska to Washington, it's the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network bringing you scoops, breakdowns, and the most comprehensive preview of the upcoming Big Ten weekend. No hurt feelings and thin skin allowed. Squad up, you're part of the Big Ten Squad.
Welcome to the Locked On Big Ten Squad. Just sit back and enjoy. My name is Craig Shemon, host of Locked On Big Ten. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, let's introduce the squad. We got Zach Sako from Locked On Nittany Lions. Huge game this weekend. Zach Anderson Yaxmeyer from Locked On UCLA. Jacob Goins from Locked On Hoosiers. Jay Stevens for Locked On Buckeyes. Roman Tomashaw from Locked On Huskies, and Spencer McLaughlin from Locked On Everything that we have, including the Ducks. Welcome, and the number 1 Ducks. Gentlemen, let's get it started right on the top. We got a big one this weekend between Penn State and Ohio State. Jay, let's start with you. Shaky outing against Nebraska, to say the least.
Very shaky, Craig. Very shaky.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jay Stevens, for chiming in.
And then you couldn't.
Sorry, Craig, I couldn't hear you over Jacob just like saying crazy stuff right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was doing the math. Indiana beat Nebraska by like 50, and then you guys needed a late score to beat them.
It was 49, actually. It was 49.
Shut up, Spencer.
All right. So, Jay, after a bye, what's your assessment of the Buckeyes coming out with Nebraska going into this Penn State game with an injured offensive line?
Even worse than I think the injured offensive line is some of the things that schematically Ohio State's trying to do right now and trying to force some things that weren't working offensively and defensively, not making changes that they need to make. I think that if Ohio State just simply made all the changes and adjusted as they needed to throughout the game, even with the O-line issues, Ohio State would have blown out Nebraska. Also, the players weren't really amped up for the game. Maybe it was because it was Nebraska, but it's homecoming. It was also after a bye week where you got beat. So there's lots of things where you should get amped up, but maybe this won't get it for you. Ohio State right now is going to Happy Valley, and this is it. You don't want to have 2 losses in a season. You don't want to have this loss and then have to host Indiana, to where that could be loss number 3, and then host Michigan, where that could be loss number 4. I mean, we're looking at a team right now with Ohio State. If the O-line issues continue and the schematic issues continue, Ohio State could be in legitimate trouble to have 2 losses in the regular season for the first time in a very long time.
Zach Sako, Locked On Nittany Lions, you're banged up too. Drew Aller did not come back for the second half of that Wisconsin game. I think we're going to ride the entire week out before we hear anything.
Yeah, woe is the Buckeyes here, because Penn State's dealing with, I think, not only more injuries, but significant injuries as well. Yeah. Starting quarterback. The starting running back is playing, but he's not 100%, Nicholas Singleton. Dennis Sutton left the game against Wisconsin, in addition to Drew Aller. And arguably one of Penn State's best players overall, offense or defense, KJ Winston, is probably out for the season. He'd be a huge difference maker in this game. So the injury bug bit Penn State over the progressively, but then really against Wisconsin. And that's the nature of college football. But Ohio State we're missing one offensive lineman, maybe another half of an offensive lineman. Penn State's down a quarterback. Hopefully the running back gets closer to 100%. Starting defensive ends, starting hybrid linebacker safety, and starting right tackle potentially as well in Anthony Donko. So I don't know that Ohio State has as many injury concerns as the Nittany Lions do.
All right,
Jacob, I saw you counting on your fingers. Can you go that high?
5 is our limit. Yes, 5 is our limit. Actually, I think
that's how many wins they normally get.
You're correct. You're correct.
I just want to chime in. Can we kind of like push that back one more week? Jacob and I were talking the other day after a game we won't mention at this point. Craig, please don't mention what happened this past Saturday. But Jacob, one thing that he very expertly told me is that Washington's going to win a road game. Let's have it be the whiteout. That'd be fantastic. Let's keep it that way.
Yeah, that's down the road for sure. And just for those that may be kind of fringe fans that are checking us out, Indiana did beat Washington this past week. But let me with their backup quarterback, I might add. Jacob, jump in anytime.
I mean, you said it all, man. Backup quarterback at home in front of the entire nation, and we did what we've done all season long. There's not much more to say.
All right, now we do have to clear some business up here on the squad because I'm going to share a little behind the scenes here. Roman, Locked On Huskies, has accused Spencer, Locked On Oregon, of costing him subscribers on Locked On. Can we hash this out and finish this up here? What happened?
I think that's at the purview of the subscribers who don't care to see a certain pillow that I have sitting to my right. But at the request of my friend, I'll keep it off the screen today. I do want to take a wildly unnecessary shot at the other Zach on today's show. Are you just counting down the days to basketball season?
I mean, the story today was that we don't care about a scrimmage loss, so I guess. But, you know.
Oh. Well,
Dang, it's that bad? It's that bad?
That's bad, man.
This is Penn State, Ohio State week, and we're talking about UCLA basketball scrimmages. Got it. Great job, Big Ten squad.
That's right.
Zach Seiko up there with the acoustics of NPR. Crispy, man. Crispy.
We need a badge for everybody who's done a show in a car, so let's go.
Yeah, it is great acoustics. Sounds good. Zach, Locked On UCLA. Yeah, the good news is you have Nebraska. We've all beaten Nebraska, so no problem.
Yeah, it might have been a decade ago for us, but now we got to try and get the Jim Moore era and see if they can go beat Nebraska and Lincoln. UCLA's played better on the road, and hopefully a freshman quarterback makes some mistakes, but we'll see what a bye week does. UCLA wins before the bye, not necessarily after the bye.
Do they play better on the road because they actually have fans in the stands?
You know, that is probably a good point. The fans have been there. The students have been there a couple of times, but, you know, that's just –
Does it get to like 15% capacity at the Rose Bowl, or
is that with or without the tarps? Because I think it's more than 15%.
Tarps look good. All right, Spencer, you are the number 1 team in the country. You do have Michigan. It's a great Jersey game. Michigan.
I think you mean to say Oregon's the number 1 team in the country. Talented though I am in EA College Football 25, I haven't assumed the number 1 ranking in the world yet, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
All right, your Ducks are number 1. Big Jersey game against Michigan, but Michigan's not Michigan, so is it going to be bad? Is it going to be a blowout? Is it going to be any mystique in the big house?
I mean, it should be bad. It should be a blowout. It'll all come down to Michigan's defense. Can they slow Oregon's offense? Because that's the only question mark I have on how big a margin of victory Oregon's going to get here in the big house. Last time they were there in 2007, it was ugly. It was really ugly. And this guy named Dennis Dixon was at quarterback, and, well, he had a pretty good day. But I have no qualms about this Oregon defense. I don't see how Michigan, with the way they've played offensively, I don't see how they get to 14 points in this one. I don't think they even get a touchdown on the board in this game. I think that Oregon's defense shows up and, you know, really reminds everyone again just how good they are. They've allowed 9 points in the last 8 quarters of football. I think it's that sort of defense that shows up again against the Wolverines.
Not bad. Look, I was impressed with Oregon's offense, put up 527 yards against an Illinois defense that I thought was better than average.
Yeah, I thought they played really well. Dylan Gabriel and offensive coordinator Will Stein have been in just, I think, a really good rhythm over the last couple of weeks. You compare what Dylan Gabriel is now compared to the first 2 games against Idaho and Boise State. I think he has trust in his offensive line. He has more trust in his receivers, his offensive coordinator. I think it's all just gelling at the right time. Honestly, a question I have for Oregon right now is, are they going to peak too early, or can they still have another gear to kick into when the postseason rolls around?
All right, and Jay, I know you got to go pretty soon. You know, you mentioned a couple of scenarios with Ohio State. They were worst-case scenarios, but, I mean, if you lose to Penn State, if you lose to Indiana, I know the Michigan game is the Michigan game. At what point do we start talking about Ryan Day?
There's a loss to Michigan. If he fails to win the national championship, those 2 things are when the conversation ramps up about if Ryan Day needs to go. I think there is a Ryan Day problem in Columbus. I am not saying that the problem that's currently here is going to be one that's going to get him out. Ohio State can still beat Michigan, and legitimately, if they take care of business like they should do the rest of the year, they should be in the running to win the national championship. But if there's another loss to Michigan, that's when things are going to get really ramped up once again, especially if Ohio State shows up and does things against Michigan like they did against Nebraska, because if you can't go into the game and just not care. You can't go into that game and not have your teammates back. I have seen during this losing streak players not have their teammates back. I have seen Ryan Day players not go all out all game long. If they do that against Michigan, who is bad, and they end up losing, there's a big problem in Columbus, and it's probably bigger than we think.
All right.
Jay, did you just
Zach
call
Seiko,
one loss a losing streak?
No. I don't want to think about how long that losing streak is, Roman. Not at all. It's been,
that's a 1-point loss. And this is also a $20 million roster, too. If Ohio State loses 2 games, like we're talking, he's got to be fired on the spot if they lose to Penn State and Indiana.
Come on the spot.
9-3 with a $20 million roster. Forget Michigan. You're out of the college football playoff with a $20 million
roster.
You're rolling your eyes at 20 million, Spencer. Are you serious right now?
Well, I'm just in the like.
Coming
is
from the other $20 million
$9
roster, by the way.
Is 9-3 that level
misses the
of
playoff.
a disaster? Yeah, it misses the playoff. But like that's one bad season. Are you firing a guy off of one quote unquote bad season?
Yes.
Where you've got 9-3? Because I'm not.
Ohio State wanted him fired last year. Ohio State fans wanted him fired last year.
Yeah, and UCLA wanted to fire Chip Kelly. Zach, how's it going there in the Los Angeles area?
I think Ohio State should hire Chip Kelly right now.
Oh, God. No, let's not dive into that man right now. He's got his own issues.
All right. As they say in the open, thick skin required sometimes. All right, we're going to do a deeper dive into Ohio State and Penn State. We're going to look at that Indiana schedule. They could run the table and not get any credit for not beating any ranked teams. We'll talk about that when the Lockdown Big Ten squad continues. Hey, get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place your bets live right there on the app, all while NFL games are going on, all in one place. So if you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out your latest stats, view live play-by-play, or a whole lot more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com and join today, and you can get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And for Thursday Night Football, I like the Texans at +1.5 at the Jets, maybe even the over at 42.5 as well. But you can do that too. Just check it out at FanDuel.com. As we continue with the Lockdown Big Ten squad, let's get into a few things here. There's a couple stories going on that we kind of touched on. We got some quarterback situations. Zach Seiko updating us on Drew Aller and Penn State. We'll see if he can go. How confident are you in Bo Pribula? He's a very experienced backup if he's got to be the guy against Ohio State.
No, this has been a 3-year insurance plan that's finally come to fruition. Because in 2021 everything fell apart when Sean Clifford dealt with some bumps and bruises. They didn't have a capable backup. They didn't have any quarterback depth. And now they do. Drew Aller and Bo have been developing together since the 2022 season. They were recruited in the same class. They're both third-year college football players. Drew just happens to be the true junior because they burned his red shirt, and Bo Pribula is the redshirt sophomore. So there has been this long-term plan with them. It is no surprise to me that he came in against Wisconsin and played the way that he did, confident, cool. He has the it factor. Everybody compares him to Trace McSorley. They liken him to, the former number 9. And he does. He has the it factor. He's tough. And it doesn't seem like things bother him. He's kind of the same all the way through and through. So Bo being the backup is really beneficial for Penn State. To answer if I feel comfortable with him running the offense against Ohio State, yes, I do. I think he helps keep the team competitive. But I think one way or another, if Aller's the starter or Bo Pribula's the full-time starter in this game, I still like the Buckeyes. I really don't know what the concern here is for, and that's me saying that as a Penn State podcast host. I don't know where this overly concerned analysis is about the Buckeyes. They're still the more talented team, honestly.
I'm interested what the rest of you guys think on that, because that's the story with Penn State. It's like, hey, we beat everybody we should except Michigan and Ohio State. They don't have to play Michigan this year, and too bad because Michigan's not Michigan. But they got to, if they don't beat Ohio State, this narrative with James Franklin continues. Guys, let's take it around the room. Other Zach, UCLA, what do you think about that moving forward with the Penn State program?
I mean, prior to coming to the Big Ten, it always seemed like, all right, maybe Penn State can beat Ohio State this year. I feel like, if you take it from a fan's perspective, I've always been wanting to see Penn State knock off Ohio State, and 9 times out of 10, it doesn't happen. And another quote, it factor, Halloween, does that mean a scary clown's coming out or what?
Yeah, the UCLA offense. Sorry, continue.
Ooh, sorry about that.
You can't hurt me. I'm a Raider fan, too. Offense doesn't exist in my football brand.
He doesn't feel pain.
You shouldn't have said that out loud, man. That's tough.
Roman, any thoughts on that? Penn State not knocking off the one game they have to this year?
I think Zach said it perfectly. Or Zach, UCLA Zach, that is, where as another West Coast guy here, I felt the same way watching this Penn State team every year. And the more I watch James Franklin, the less I seem to be impressed by his big game coaching ability. Where, I mean, the last memorable time that I can remember looking at Penn State saying, oh, wow, that was a really impressive win, was back in 2016 when they beat Ohio State, where that's the last time I was really like, okay, yeah, let's, and, we're going to completely gloss over the 2017 Fiesta Bowl. We don't need to get into that today.
I was going to say, or you're forgetting about a game against a certain purple and silver team, right? Purple and gold team.
Purple and gold, yeah, there we go. But we're going to completely gloss over that this week. But when I think about it, I think about this Penn State roster. I did pick them to have them in the Big Ten championship game this year, where this was the one game I had them dropping in the regular season. So I'm really curious to see what this looks like.
Yeah. Jacob, real quick. So with Curtis Rourke, the thumb.
Okay, cool. I'll just go sit on my thumb in the corner.
Don't you mean your duck
We've heard enough out of you, respectfully.
Do you want to chime in on this or not?
I mean, I had thoughts, but apparently I am not worthy. So you know what?
Keep it moving. Keep it moving. I heard something about Indiana, so we can talk about that.
You go.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to chime in. I'll be quick since I'm not very welcome here.
Yeah, I know.
The thought that popped into my head with James Franklin here is Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay. In the regular season, Kyle Shanahan owns Sean McVay, dominates him. But McVay's got the one Super Bowl, and I think Shanahan would trade every single one of those regular season games to have the one Super Bowl that Sean McVay has gotten. I think you'd say Shanahan's probably the better coach. But why am I talking about this with Penn State and Ohio State? I don't think there's any pressure on James Franklin to win this game if he's able to win a game in the playoff. If he gets further than Ohio State in the playoff picture this year, if he comes up and plays Ohio State in the college football playoff and beats them, then you're going to look back at the regular season losses and say, that's okay, because this is a sport now that is all about the 12-team playoff.
All right. Jacob, do you have thoughts on the game?
I mean, in terms of the game, Seiko, would it be a different story if Penn State was fully healthy? I mean, do you guys feel that you could win this game if everybody's back, or is Ohio State just that much better? And then we were talking about Ryan Day possibly being out. I mean, at what point, if it doesn't work out in the playoff this year for Penn State, at what point do you say, look, James Franklin, you've capped out, you've peaked. We've got to go find somebody that can get us over the hump and take down the Ohio States of the world?
I mean, this is, to answer that directly, this is the first time they've been in that situation. They've never been to the college football playoff, so this is a step in the right direction for Penn State. I mean, if they beat Ohio State, they can go realistically 12-0 and face Oregon in the Big Ten championship there. Sorry, Jacob. But Indiana's in the conversation, right? So it's a possibility. And it's a possibility that they could get one of those 4 bye spots. So forget about the home field advantage, that home game in the playoff too. So James Franklin's not on the hot seat if he loses to Ohio State. He's on the hot seat if they miss the college football playoff. And I don't think realistically that happens right now.
Spencer, we've been talking about injuries in this other game. What's the latest with Jordan Birch and Terrence Ferguson with Oregon? I think they're back on the practice field this week, right?
They've been practicing. Questionable is the designation. And amazingly, Oregon's been without these 2 guys that have not just been starters this year, but have been impact players and are going to be players in the NFL after this season. And yet Oregon has had no discernible drop-off, winning the last 2 games 73-9 against their 2 Big Ten opponents. So, certainly you'd like to have, I think Jordan Birch is probably a little bit more important with the way Michigan runs the football. He is a stout run defender there in the middle of that Oregon defensive line, but It's incredible that a guy who you could say is Oregon's best and most productive player in that front four has just not led to him being out. It just hasn't led to a discernible drop-off in production start to finish in these football games. I mean, they beat Ohio State, and they were able to sack Will Howard. They were able to take away the run game. They've just done a really good job. So, yeah, I'd like to see T. Ferg and Jordan Burch get back, but if they're not back, it doesn't change my outlook for Oregon that much against Michigan.
Jacobs, Curtis Rourke definitely playing against Michigan State this weekend with the thumb?
It's not a definite thing. They're taking it a day at a time. I mean, I think a lot of fans are in the boat of if he's healthy, sure, obviously you want him to play. But if there's any question, since Michigan State's not what they have been in the past, maybe start Taven Jackson. If it goes well in the first half, roll with him. If it's like, oh no, we're in serious trouble, then you may have to call on Curtis Rourke and say, look, man, you got to come in a little bit earlier. We're going to find out. I think it really will be a game time decision on Saturday. Does Indiana need him? I don't personally think so. And so if that's the case, if he's not 100% with the thumb, if he can't, get grip on the football, whatever the case may be, if he's not 100%, my personal opinion, play Taven Jackson, have Curtis Rourke in your back pocket, and see where you go from there. And that's kind of where we stand right now.
All right. There was some other quarterback news this week in the Big Ten. Brandon Sullivan is going to be the starter for Iowa. Cade McNamara is not even on the depth chart. And Michigan's Jack Tuttle decided to retire this week due to health reasons. He was one of the 3 starters that Michigan was throwing in there. He had a concussion, and he's had problems with his arm. All right, when we come back, I want to ask, what happens if Penn State and Oregon and Indiana are all undefeated? Who's going to the Big Ten championship game? We'll take a look at that next as the squad continues from Locked On Big Ten. 5 Hour Energy. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy, they know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby. It's a way of life, and it takes a lot of energy to power through all the days, all day long tailgates, the touchdown celebrations, or maybe an agonizing second overtime, which is why they've created Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot made just for super fans like all of us. The fans who are first in the parking lot and the last to leave, we see you. That's right. So check it out you get 5 Hour Energy with a brand new logo for you there. Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy. So no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is that you do it with 5 Hour Energy, available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. All right, back for a final segment here on Locked On Big Ten, the squad going into first games in November. All right, I poised this possibility if Penn State beats Ohio State this weekend and continues to have an undefeated record. If Indiana continues to win and even beats Ohio State, that's the one they got to get because they have no ranked wins on their schedule, and of course Oregon can run the table as well. We could have multiple three undefeated teams going in, and who knows? Maybe somebody loses a game, and Ohio State is still part of the picture as well. Guys, let's go around. How do you see it coming out? Is your Big Ten championship in your mind? Your prediction, is it the same now as it was at the beginning of the season? Zach Seiko, start with you.
I went with Oregon and Ohio State. I'm the Penn State podcast host, and I'm picking Ohio State. And it's funny because Jay over at Locked On Buckeyes is concerned about his team and think that Penn State wins this game. Interestingly enough, and he's not here to, back me up on that, but when we did the crossover episode. So I still think Oregon and Ohio State are on that crash course. I mean, that was a 1-point game. I'm not really selling out on Ohio State here. I think the early spread is 13-14 points for Ohio State and Indiana. That sounds about right to me. I think Indiana's a really good football team. I don't even know that they're punching above their weight class. I think they were underrated in the season. Penn State doesn't have any ranked wins on that schedule either. When you think about it, they're kind of in the same boat as Indiana, but it's just Penn State was already in the top 10 to start, whereas Indiana kind of has to continually prove itself like an undrafted rookie to get that second contract. So I'm still going with Oregon and Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. But if Penn State proves me wrong on my own show, then it will be Oregon and Penn State instead.
Other Zach, is your prediction different now than it was at the beginning of the season?
Yeah, because Indiana looks like a legit football team. I mean, I think I want the chaos. I want the 3 ties,
Yes.
right? I think you were saying, Craig, off the air, a prospect so scary that we scared Spencer off, right? 3 unbeatens, Oregon gets left out. That would be the dream of the Big Ten squad, and we would hope Spencer would come back that show. But, Oregon's clearly really good until Penn State proves otherwise. As much Nittany Lion fans look at me when I say this, I want you to win this game, right? That's not the expert opinion. That's just to see something different. That's just to see something different. But I think Ohio State probably has enough, a little bit healthier, and they'll probably get it done against most likely Indiana and Penn State. But I would like to see something different. So it still seems like it's Oregon, Ohio State. We could probably see that matchup 3 times this year if they meet in the Big Ten championship and in the playoff. That's not something I want to see, but it might happen if things play out according to who's the favorite.
That might be really funny, not for the Oregon fans who watch, but because of Spencer. Welcome to the Big Ten. You go undefeated and you don't get into the Big Ten championship game. Roman, how about your predictions now versus the beginning of the year?
Well, first off, Craig, I would absolutely love to see a 12-0 Oregon team find a way to miss the Big Ten championship game. Not just because of this lovely flag behind me, just because it would be absolutely hilarious. Before the season, I had Ohio State and Penn State, partially because I'm not going to pick Oregon to win anything ever. That's just part of the shtick at this point, and that's to stay that way. And I'm going to stay with it. Where partially, Indiana is a really good football team. Would love to see that, but with what Ohio State is and what this season has to be for them, I feel like it's unfortunately going to find a way for that to work out. Not that I want to see them win either necessarily, but I feel like that's in the cards at this point in time.
All right, Jacob, your predictions now versus earlier, and how concerned are you about no ranked wins? I guess that makes Ohio State a must win for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, I mean, do you want me to lie and say that my predictions are not the same? Because I definitely didn't have Indiana in the Big Ten championship game to start the season. But look, yes, I'm the Indiana guy, but I do think we're good enough to get there. I think that's what people are starting to at least accept a little bit. The more people watch this team outside of Bloomington, like Seiko was saying, I mean, this is a good team that people have started to jump on a little bit. Believe I had Oregon and Ohio State. That was a very popular pick at the beginning of the year. Look, it is a must win. You got to win the other games around it if you're Indiana, of Michigan State, Michigan, and Purdue, because until we see the first playoff rankings come out next week, and if Indiana is to drop one that's not Ohio State, I don't know how much they would punish us for that. I don't know. With our schedule that's not overly complicated, it's not overly difficult. Yeah, it makes the one ranked game on there that much more important, because there are no other chances to get one if it's not Ohio State. Because if you lose that game, you're not in the Big Ten championship, and then you're just hoping that the committee thinks you're good enough to get into the playoff. It's scary times for Indiana if you don't win that game, but I think we're good enough to do it. So I guess that would mean what? That would mean Oregon and Indiana in the Big Ten championship game, with Ohio State and Penn State being left out. What a crazy world that would be.
That'd be very crazy. Happy Halloween, guys. You guys do a great job. To all of our listeners and viewers, follow and subscribe all these guys. They do a great job covering your teams every single day, and subscribe then. And we cover your favorite team every day right here throughout the season. And I've got you covered with the whole conference on Locked On Big Ten, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Craig Shemon. We'll talk to you next time.